Big news to end the week, a major loss for Trump at the Supreme Court, striking down his tariffs as illegal. The court found Trump did not have the power to do what he wanted alone. Now, over a year into Trump's second term, he's back at square one on his trade war. Now, how did Trump try to claim these powers in the first place? The answer matters for the rest of his second term, because he argued the U.S. faced big emergencies. So he had to claim emergency powers. It's the same kind of fact-free, often extreme power grabs he has deployed, used to put soldiers and agents around the U.S. Some of those folks have been out doing things. Some have been kicked out under court orders. But these can be autocratic, king-like claims where rulers make emergency claims so they can try to see if they can have more power. And if they get away with it, you'll see that kind of claim more often. If they don't, if they lose, it can stem this type of power grab. Well, Trump did not get away with this one. He lost this case by a wide margin with his own appointees that you see there, Gorsuch and Barrett, those are Trump-appointed justices, also ruling he exceeded his power. So, my first point to you on this, if you remember just one thing about this big Trump loss, it's this. You're looking at the coalition that may stop President Trump from abusing other emergency powers. Because while, of course, the U.S. can face real emergencies or wars, and they can empower a president to take certain actions, obviously, presidents can't just declare a permanent global emergency across their entire term. And on this issue, if you're interested in the facts, there's a 77 law that enables some extra powers in unusual and extraordinary threat situations. But that law doesn't even mention tariffs. And surely it doesn't apply to the 100-plus countries that Trump tried to tariff, claiming it was all under this one law. And if you're worried about government overreach, it doesn't really matter whether you agree with a given president or their party or even the goal. That's what government overreach looks like. That's why the court ruled against Trump today. And this point was on display with the initial skepticism we saw against the Trump DOJ when this case was first argued in the court.
I just don't understand this argument. It's not an article. It's a congressional power, not a presidential power to tax.
He didn't have that power to tax and tariff on his own. That's the law. You heard there Justice Sotomayor being nice about it. She said she didn't understand the Trump defense's argument because it made no sense. And now, from that set of questioning to today's loss for Trump, the Chief Justice rules that Trump asserts the independent power to impose tariffs on imports from any country, of any product, at any rate, for any amount of time. In other words, that type of claim is an absurdly impossible kind of king-like power if you had it. And Roberts went on to explain, ruling against Trump today, no president has ever read that law I just showed you to, quote, confer such power. The other presidents who didn't see it that way were right, because no president has that kind of power. So this Supreme Court, which has clearly helped Trump in other ways, noted this is ultimately about those limits on power against any leader who would want to act like a king in this country. More about that than, say, economics data. The judges concluding that they ruled against Trump while noting they have no special competence in economics or foreign affairs. We claim only the limited role by the Constitution, they explained. Quote, we hold that the law does not authorize the president to impose tariffs. The law does not authorize those powers, so Trump doesn't have them. This matters, especially at a time when we have a president who lies about elections he lost and is sending the FBI in to seize ballots and is trying to indict his political opponents, journalists, and others. There are some people who like Trump so much they want to look the other way on that stuff. I'm not here to talk to you about whether people like or dislike Trump. We still have a First Amendment in this country. You're free to make up your mind and express yourself. But that First Amendment that protects you is in a Constitution that also protects you by limiting him and anyone else who comes into power and tries to abuse government powers like a king. And that's why this one is a lot more intense than just a tariff debate. Trump tried an emergency excuse, and it bought him some time, but the court has now ruled it was false because there wasn't the kind of emergency that justified these powers, and it failed. Chief Justice Roberts, holding the line here as a longtime conservative appointed by Bush, joined by other Trump appointees, Barrett and Gorsuch, appointed by Trump. And that reinforces, even at a time where people are skeptical and there's so much partisanship, that on this issue, the court had independence. It wasn't just a vote based on the party of the appointee or whether they had a history with Trump. Quite the contrary. Gorsuch may appreciate that Trump appointed him. They may like each other to some degree, but the law is the law. And this wasn't a close call by the time it reached the high court. They'd lost in the lower courts. Trump did acknowledge the loss today. He complained. He lashed out. He showed a kind of anger maybe because he knew he'd lost in public at one point, complaining that he has other powers, like embargoes or war powers. So he thinks it's unfair that if he has those other big powers, why should this whole tariff power be limited? Well, let me tell you something, and this is an easy thing to understand. That complaint is not a legal or even a logical argument. The whole point of limited and separate powers in our system, the reason why we're not like Putin's Russia or Stalin's Russia or many other countries you could think of, is that we separate the powers. We have different powers in the government spread out. They're not all held by one person, let alone the king. And yet I'm going to let you hear, alongside the ruling, our president marveling at this system of checks and balances, almost as if he just learned about it today.
I cannot charge them anything. Think of that. How ridiculous is that? I'm allowed to embargo them. I'm allowed to tell them you can't do business in the United States anymore. We want you out of here. But if I want to charge them $10, I can't do that. It's incorrect. Their decision's incorrect.
He's upset. He disagrees with it. He thinks it's incorrect. And yet Trump's presentation references the limits on his power as he conceded the limits. He said he'd look for other ways to pursue tariffs, meaning other ways not barred by the limit on his power under this court and longstanding law.
They merely overruled a particular use of IEEPA tariffs. And essentially it's used to get a fee. It's ridiculous, but it's okay because we have other ways, numerous other ways. We have a totally firm decision now, and I don't think the court meant it because the court doesn't show great spirit toward our country, in my opinion.
He's entitled to his opinion. But the president was speaking as a man shown up here by a code he does not control. That's how power works. You can have some and still face other forces with their own power. That's true from the halls of government power in Washington out to the streets. Or as a classic simple moment captured it in the hit show The Wire, which explores power and its limits, law and its inconsistencies, you'll see how when one man experiences the limits on his supposed authority, he wants it to be one way. But it's the other.
We want it to be one way. What? We want it to be one way.
Man, I don't
want
know
it to be one
Man,
way.
stop! Stop saying that.
But it's the other way.
Trump wanted it to be one way. But sometimes it's the other way. Today, it was the other way. The Supreme Court was able to say, And this is a crucial setback for any parts of Trump's second term that involve him wanting to be a king or seize unitary autocratic powers or claim that emergencies mean he gets to do what no one else is allowed to do.